While the overall sports card market has been trending downward in price this year, there's never a shortage of individual cards going up on a week-to-week basis. But just how long do those cards remain hot? This week I'm reviewing 12 months of Sports Card Investor top 5 hot cards, and we'll take a look at where they are now. Let's data dive. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Data Dive powered by Market Movers. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot. It's almost the end of the year, and I don't know about you, but this year has been fast. I feel like I was just out at the Burbank Card Show in February watching the Chiefs take home another Super Bowl after an epic battle with the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, now here we are again wondering which teams will squeak into the playoffs and try to contend this year, including my Chiefs and surprisingly, my Lions. So something I thought I would make sense to do would be a kind of year in review, but specifically of some of the hottest players and cards from the last 12 months. So what I did is I took the number 1 card from our top 5 hot cards episodes over on the Sports Card Investor channel, and I put them into charts. And we'll take a look at their journeys since then, month over month, starting with January all the way up until now. And as always, this video is brought to you by Market Movers. Visit marketmoversapp.com. Use promo code DIVE when you check out, and you'll get 14 days completely for free to try out Market Movers, and then 20% off for life as long as you're subscribed. Now let's get into the data. So this is a good opportunity for me to clarify a few things. One misconception for some people is that the weekly top 5 videos are about us trying to tell people which cards to buy, but that in fact is not our goal at all. In fact, very often, we think it might be smart to sell some of those hottest cards on a week-to-week basis. Now, once upon a time, we used to do a buy, sell, hold type of show to give our conjecture around specific cards, and then we'd share our rationale about what we do with those cards in a given moment in time. While those kinds of videos and conversations are a lot of fun, as Aunt May said to Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And the biggest thing for us, we don't want to steer anyone in the wrong direction. I certainly don't want to do that. We want everybody to make their own decisions. So we shifted away from the buy, sell, hold format, and instead we shifted into a strictly data-driven top 5, a top 5 that includes a weekly cold card, as well as a very clear disclaimer that goes something like, as a reminder, the cards you'll see in today's show have gone up in price recently, but are not necessarily good investments right now. Do your own research to decide which cards you think will go up in value next. So those videos are essentially a weekly market update, and they serve as a really nice anchor in time to remember which players once had some buzz. And now we can reflect back on those cards to use them as lessons. So that's what I want to do. So we're going to start out with Market Pulse. And the reason I'm starting out with Market Pulse is because this gives a really nice, broad, holistic view and sense of the overall sports card market. So over the last 365 days, the SCI 500, so we made this index. We're actually going to be refreshing this too, by the way, with a kind of some more current modern cards. But largely this is comprised of staple cards, of iconic cards, the Hank Aaron's and the Mantles and the Jordans and things like that, right? So we've got those 500 cards. It's been a little bit of a journey. This was actually up 10% back in February from this sort of same time last year. And you can see some ebbs and flows. We know there's seasonality in sports cards. Down, up, and now we're down to the lowest point, down 11.6% from this time last year. So that's something just to keep in mind. That's all I wanted to highlight here. Keep that number, let's call it down 12%, top of mind when we look at specific cards so that you can sort of do what might be considered like a market agnostic growth or decline for these other cards relative to the overall sports card market. So let's start with January. I've got a handful of cards here. And I'm actually not going to spend too much time this time looking at the charts because it's kind of a lot of noise. You can see some of the ebbs and flows, but I want to scroll down and simply look at the change percentages. So these aren't all necessarily at the same moment, the static point in time from when we ran them on the top 5. What I did was I went back to January 1st for the month of January. I'll go to February 1st, March 1st. So some of these cards were subsequent. They may have happened more toward the end of January, but this is the best we can do to put them all on one chart and look at them. So Luka, Prism Silver, down 43% since we had that. It's been continued to be pretty bad for ultra-modern basketball in general for most players. There were such high prices a few years ago that we are still feeling the effects and the come down of that. Also did not help that when they brought Kyrie over to the Mavs last year at least, that experiment did not work whatsoever. The Mavs went on to have one of the worst records in the NBA of any team after they brought Kyrie in, and they ended up missing the playoffs. So that was a really bad situation. They're playing much better this year. Luke is playing fantastically. In spite of my predictions, video that I did for the NBA, he's looking like a possible MVP contender at this point based on the way that he's playing. You've got Trevor Lawrence, his Press Proof Premium. These are actually really nice cards. I'm just going to highlight this to say these are pretty nice, sneaky cards. If you like gold cards, these are basically golds without being called golds. They're not numbered. They are somewhat short printed, and you can get them for a really nice price. It's kind of like being able to get an optic gold, except it's that more like foil finish instead of the refractor hollow foil, a hollow finish. T-Law has not been playing well this season. In last week's game that we watched, they could have won that game. The Jaguars could have very easily beaten the Ravens. They turned the ball over in the red zone. They missed 2 field goals. They had a snafu with the clock and didn't stop the clock properly on the goal line, basically. Really embarrassing performance, honestly. And T-Law has all the tools. He just hasn't been able to put it together. I thought he was going to be really good this year after last season. He really hasn't been. The Jaguars are kind of pretenders, in my opinion. He's down 68% from the time we had this. Down 64%, interestingly, is the raw version of this Brock Purdy card. Now, you might say, wait a minute. Brock Purdy's been super hot. Why would this card be down? Well, the market is down overall. But if you remember, this was maybe his first rookie card that was available. It's serial number to 399. I put in the raw version here because that's what we highlighted at that time. There's more graded cards. There's a lot more Brock Purdy cards out there now. So while some of his cards are up, this particular card is down because it had so much hype around it. It was up at $195, now down to $71. That's a really important lesson. Don't get caught up in the hype of a card where there's a shortage. There's some kind of shortage on supply when there's more cards coming. I talk a lot about that with like hoops and Donruss as a product. Never buy into those from an investment perspective for sure, or even just for your collection, unless you like losing money on those and just overpaying for things. And then Joe Burrow. Man, Burrow just really didn't look good. This was like the worst possible scenario for Joe Burrow. For Joe Burrow as a player, for Joe Burrow fans, for Cincinnati Bengals fans, and for anybody holding Joe Burrow cards. He was super hot at the National, as hot as anybody. All the young kids, give me Burrow, give me Burrow, give me Burrow. He did not play this well this season. So far in, 3 or 4 games now, Jake Browning has played better statistically than Burrow did all season, and then he gets hurt. So that's the second time in his career with a serious injury. Hopefully he can come back and return to, Joe Cool form of previous years for the good of the league and everybody who's rooting for him. Let's shift over to February. And I'm going to speed it up a little bit on the commentary, but Jalen Hurts is a guy that I was very hot on going into this season. The Eagles looked like to me they were going to maybe run away with the NFC once again. The Niners are really good. I knew they would be good. We suspected that. Brock Purdy has completely proven me wrong. I was in very much wait and see mode. I didn't think that Brock Purdy necessarily wouldn't be good. I just was skeptical, I would say. He's been very good. The Niners are very good. Hurts hasn't looked good recently. He rushes for a lot of touchdowns. He hasn't thrown for a touchdown in like 3 weeks or something. He's turning the ball over. Eagles need to figure it out before the playoffs, but as a Lions fan, personally, I'm hoping maybe they don't. I am holding a few Jalen Hurts cards. I still believe in him. I think he's a pretty high character individual, and he's a really good player. So I'm not too worried about a couple of weeks. He's down, by the way, 51%. Remember, this was Super Bowl time, so his cards were hot. LeBron's down 45%. He continues to defy time. He's playing at an incredibly high level still. The Lakers won the in-season tournament, but right now would be like a bubble team for the playoffs, which is really interesting. And his Topps Chrome base card is down 45% since we looked at this card. So that's huge. When you think 12% for the SCI 500, this card is in the SCI 500, and it's down 45%. There's some big LeBron cards surfacing on open auction right now. I don't know, might be a good time to pick up some LeBron if you're into collecting or investing his cards. Cam Thomas, he got hot. He came in, super hot, and his cards went insane. And it just goes to show he's actually played really well, or at least pretty well this season for the Nets, and yet his cards are still down pretty massively from the high points last year when he blew up. So again, watch that hype train. Patrick Mahomes, hollow, down 15%. he's got issues with his receivers. He just doesn't quite look like Mahomes. He doesn't look composed this year. He needs some more weapons. And then Mac McClung, this was kind of a funny one. He won the dunk contest, right? He was like up into the NBA, wins the dunk contest. Next thing you know, he's back down into the G League. This card spiked like crazy. It is now down 71%. This is the definition of like hype FOMO when people got excited about Mac McClung. You're noticing a trend here, by the way, that the vast majority of these cards are all down. In fact, January, they were all down in January. They were all down in February. So we're 8 for 8 so far on cards that are down. We get to our first one here. I'll start at the bottom with Ohtani, who's up. So again, there's a trend. When we're talking about these top 5 cards every week, it's not to hype them, but it is to show, hey, look, here's somebody who spiked. Here's why they're spiking. Do with that information what you will, but probably a good idea to try to sell some of those if you're holding them, and maybe to pause on buying while there's hype around them. So Ohtani's kind of the exception, not the rule here. Even in spite of the injury, he got the big payday recently. He's going to be hitting. He hopes to get back to pitching. We're talking about, maybe a different surgery on the elbow or something. So hopefully we can see him on both sides of the ball. He's up 41% from the time that we ran this. And this was before the season. So that has a lot to do with it. We'll see more of his cards on this list as we go forward. Jordan Walker did not have a good season. He looked like an absolute beast in the minor leagues, and he just didn't have a good season. It wasn't terrible, but it definitely wasn't what any of us were hoping for, down 66%. Jason Dominguez down 52%, in spite of coming up and showing the flashes that he did, hitting a few home runs, down 52% on the alien. Connor McDavid down 37%. That guy is on pace. He's on pace. We were talking about hockey on a member live stream recently, and I said, if you really want to park money long term, and I think have less instability on it in terms of a long term, hockey might be one of the best places. Only when you're talking about the greats. And again, this is my opinion. You can do whatever you want, but if you just are seriously looking for like a alternative investment vehicle, the hockey audience, the hockey base are very collector driven, and it doesn't see as much instability on older cards. Current players, yes, they see ebbs and flows. They see the same reactionary trends, especially on young guns, which is why we always highlight those. But McDavid, he's really solidifying himself long term. You could go for this card, one of his Future Watch autos, something else, but he's a beast. This card is down 37% from where it was earlier this year. So now we're switching into April, and some of these cards are making people feel like April Fools. Adley Rutschman, PSA 10 Bowman Chrome Draft. Something to always keep in mind. You have players who only have Bowman cards, Bowman first, prospect cards, and then they're going to have rookie cards. What do you think that does? It splits the audience. It splits the amount of things that you can buy into, much like the situation we saw with Brock Purdy, just having more cards released. As rookie cards come out, now all of a sudden people who are trying to invest or speculate have to decide. Rookie card, Bowman card, what do I want to collect? There's an audience for both, but it does kind of dilute the overall money in those. So that's why I always say sell those prospect cards when they get the call up, then reevaluate which ones you want to go after long term. He had a good season. Adley had a good season. He's down 62%. The Orioles had the best record in the AL, maybe in Major League Baseball. I don't remember if the Braves were better. I should know that. Jeff Wilson. What a fall from grace for the Jeff Wilson influencer card, now down 74%. That one came out hot. Part of it was because of the bounties that Jeff had put around getting the first graded copies, signing some, paying things out. I thought that was really fun, what he did with those, just to kind of celebrate, I guess, getting his own card, which is pretty cool. So that one was up at $175, now down to $45. Jordan PSA 10 base, there's a lot of these, and there's a lot of Jordan cards, down 52%. Ohtani up 17% on the Bowman Megabox prospect card. And De'Aaron Fox, who's back and playing very well. Very good point guard for the Kings. This one is down just 9.6%, so relatively flat. Moving forward to May, we got Jimmy Buckets, who's just been on this every other year cycle of incredibly hot. It's like playoff Jimmy comes around and people lose their minds and go, let me overpay for a bunch of his cards. So this one's now down, the past and present, down 50% from where it was during that playoff hype. Jamal Murray obviously played very well. He stepped up his game big time in the playoffs, leading to the Nuggets championship, first championship, and Jokic's first championship. He was actually on our top 5 hot list a couple times. in the month of May, which is why he's got 2 cards here. Interesting though, right? One of them is down 25%, one is up 5%. Connor Bedard, super hyped, super hyped, supposed to be the best player since McDavid, down 32%. Part of this, again, this was the first card, this Team Canada Juniors card that came out. Now we're in anticipation of his Series 2 Young Guns. Supposed to come out, I think, sometime in February of 2024. And then Ellie De La Cruz, he blew up. He was the exception, too, in terms of call-ups, who saw his prices just continue to skyrocket. He's racing around bases. He's stealing home. He's, flashing a strong arm and hitting with incredible exit velocity. Honestly, if you look at his stats, he really didn't play all that great. We'll see if he's going to be really good or if he's going to be more like another guy, O'Neal Cruz, who people got excited about 2 years ago. But Ellie is up from the time we ran this. Another Jimmy Buckets card, down 58%. That playoff crash is real, I'm telling you. NBA, like, people go crazy for the teams that are playing well, and then they just come crashing back down. Ellie on this particular card, and since that time frame at the beginning of June, down 44%. So you started to see that ultimate peak hype, and now down 44% on this Chrome Prospects card. Bradley Beal, up 37%, interestingly, from this time frame. The trade to Phoenix got people excited. He hasn't been able to play. The Suns don't look particularly good. Everything I said about my concerns with lack of depth and just having a bunch of mid-range shooters remains to be seen if they can even all stay on the court. And then Kristaps Porzingis, the move to Boston has rejuvenated his cards. They were pretty cheap, down to $14, and that's something also to just keep an eye on. If you see players who are a pretty good talent level and you expect they might be traded to a contending team, those are ones that aren't always a bad idea to scoop a few of and see what happens. Low price cost of entry. All right, we're getting into July, into the National and all that. We've got Ohtani, more Ohtani. This is his rookie debut. That's where we started to see things come down in the midseason for Ohtani. Ellie down from this point, again, 64%. So this is the same card we saw 2 months prior that we were up since then. Now it's coming crashing down from that high point. More Ohtani. And then Sal Frelick, of all players, down 23% since July. August, we had Cody Bellinger get hot for a minute. People were excited about him. Down 12%. More Ohtani on the iconic World Baseball Classic strikeout of Trout. The young Dolph and others in the background for Ja, who's back and played extremely well in his first game to beat the Pelicans with a buzzer beater. And Anthony Edwards Green Prism up 13%. So this card, this young Dolph card has been on a crazy journey. It seems to have become cemented as pretty iconic for a lot of people. And now we're getting into the fall. September, we've got Dominguez again. This card's down 56% in a few months. It's basically been cut in half in terms of price. Maybe now is barrier to entry, $21. I'm just going to pop this one open and actually look at the chart for this. If we look at the last 365 days, you can see this card was up around $50 at a high point, is now coming down. I don't know. We'll have to see. Again, keep in mind his rookie cards might come out. Brock Purdy, Prism base, up 142% in just a few months because he's playing well. Tua's up 27%. More Brock Purdy Silver. He was on that top 5 twice as the #1 card. Also up 84%. And then second to last but not least, so this is October. Christian McCaffrey, should he be the MVP? Should Purdy be the MVP? Should both of them be the MVP? I think it's between the two of them, honestly, at this point, based on how everybody else has played. Austin Matthews down 8% on his young guns since he was hot. Wemby down 5% from this point in time, and Adolis Garcia actually still up. He was up higher than this. He's actually come down, but at 48% increase from the beginning of the month. Again, this one started at the beginning of October, not later when his cards had spiked. And then the last thing I want to do is actually look at the players we've featured so far at #1 in November and December so far, and talk about just what I think might happen with them going forward. So Victor Wembanyama, he's 19 years old. He'll be 20 in January. I think he's playing really well so far. The Spurs aren't particularly good. Wemby already looks like very clearly their best player on the team. He's second in the NBA as of this recording in blocks, right behind Brook Lopez and right ahead of Chet. He's doing everything. His defensive efficiency should have him, honestly, in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year with Rudy Gobert and probably Chet, Jaren Jackson, maybe a few other guys. He's playing really well. He's still really young. He's got all the tools. We'll see how he develops. You just never know if guys can go from here to this level. But bear in mind that most NBA players, they need 3, 4, 5, sometimes even 6 years to reach that peak performance level. Guys like Luka, who we saw come into the league and just absolutely dominate from day one, that's not normal. What's normal is that progression curve, and I'm excited to see what Wemby can do. I made a video that I'd be pumping the brakes on his cards. I'd probably still be doing that, although there is a phenomenon with rookies where some of them have a post-All-Star game breakout. Trae Young had that happen in his rookie year, so that's something to keep an eye on too. If he were to suddenly like blow up and get up to 26 a game or something, people might get excited, who knows, remains to be seen. CJ Stroud, I'm not an Ohio State fan, but I will tell you this guy was really fun to watch. He's fun to listen to. He seems like a good leader. He's got the right mix of fly by the seat of his pants, but also sneaky field intelligence. And he can throw the ball really accurately. Really big bummer to see him go down with injury, to see Tank Dell go down with the season-ending injury. The Texans were surprising everyone, and honestly were looking like a team nobody would want to face in the playoffs. Doesn't look like they're going to make it in now. Maybe they will. Maxey Silver, PSA 10. Maxey just looks fantastic. He's obviously in the shadow of Embiid on that team, but he looks like another great point guard in the NBA. The thing I never know what to make of is there's a ton of those now. It seems like every other team has a superstar caliber, all NBA caliber point guard. Like they can all score. They're mostly scoring guards. They can get to the bucket. They'll get 5 or 6 assists a game. Maxey looks really good, but there's a kind of a long list of point guards right now in the NBA ahead of him. So I'm not sure what to make of his cards. Russell Wilson, I said the Broncos were still pretenders. Wilson was getting a lot of credit for them winning a streak of games. He was game managing. He wasn't turning the ball over, which was a big improvement. They've since slipped somewhat. We'll see what happens with his cards long term. I don't know. He had a great first half of his career. I don't know if it's enough. He's just a pretty quirky dude. Seems really nice. Beats to his own drum. I don't know how that's going to impact his card prices next year. But I don't see the Broncos doing anything in the playoffs. So I'd be selling right now unless you're just planning to hold for the long term. Jordan Love has impressed me in certain games. The Packers were looking good for a minute there. Their defense has been super inconsistent. I think they're going to stick with him. I don't think the Packers are going to make any change, at least going into next year. So, we'll see how he can develop. And then Ohtani, up 95%, on this card, even since we ran him in our top 5, or I guess since the beginning of November, because of that big signing. That was something I had speculated on, that I thought the move to what I had predicted was the Dodgers 6 months ago would help. It has so far. Ohtani's one of the greatest athletes of our generation, and I'm really excited to see how he can play next year. So none of this is particularly surprising to me, and it probably isn't to you either. Most of the time we suggest, again, selling when a card hits our top 5, and for good reason. You can see that the vast majority of those cards decline sometime thereafter. But I want to know from you what stands out the most in this video. What do you think of some of these players? Any of them that you think might be on the come up again? Let me know down in the comments. And thanks so much for watching. Until next time, happy investing, keep on collecting, and make sure to have fun.